Lesroy Williams, and I am your moderator for this, the CFBC Fourth Authors Forum, titled In Celebration of Books. I would like to summon the authors to the head table. I'm going to call your name, and when you hear your name, you can just come to the head table. Mrs. Carissa Kelly. Mr. Hansel Manners. Miss Elziva Coffey. Anywhere, I suppose, anywhere. Mr. Enowet Inanga. Mr. Wayne Maynard. Mr. Leonard Stapleton. Yes, he's not here. We will have some of our authors joining us virtually. They are Mrs. Carol Mitchell. Give her a round of applause. Mrs. Willa Liebert Tavernier. And Miss Shahada Jack. Let us now please stand for the singing of the national anthem, which will be done by Mr. Jonathan Bass, ASGS student, or he's going to play an instrument. Thank you very much, Mr. Bass. I would now invite Mrs. Sonita Daniel, the Director of Library Services, to give us the welcome remarks. Please be seated.
Ms. Dorothy Warner, Secretary General of the St. Kitts and Nevis National Commission for UNESCO, Mr. Andrew Abraham, President of the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College, members of staff of the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College, esteemed authors participating, and other authors in the audience, our special guests, welcome. I extend a very warm welcome to all who are gathered here in person or viewing this event online. We feel honored to have 8 amazing published authors participating in this auspicious national literary event. We express an especially warm welcome to our esteemed authors and our heartfelt gratitude for accepting our invitation. Today is World Book and Copyright Day, and we at the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College are joining the rest of the world in celebrating books, reading, writing, and authors. I now invite all published authors and writers to stand so that we can salute you on your special day. Let us give them a huge round of applause. Thank you. This Authors Forum aims to give fillip and support to authors. We at the CFBC recognize the importance of reading, research, writing, and publishing. And this is a forum to provide a platform for authors and writers of different genres to bring their talent to the fore and help to change public policy, help to shape public policy. This event represents the effort by the CFBC, the only indigenous tertiary level institution in this country to promote scholarship and local writing. With this roundtable, our CFBC library is seeking to lead the way in the development of literary works and to show appreciation to local authors. Later in this ceremony, we will launch a digital exhibition of their works. Reading affects writing. American legendary storyteller and master of short fiction Stephen King said, and I quote, "If you want to be a writer, you must do 2 things: read a lot and write a lot." End of quote. The foundation for writing is reading, and so we would like from this platform to recommend strongly that we put reading on the family and national agenda in St. Kitts and Nevis. Those who will not read, according to Jim Rohn, are no better off than those who cannot read. Reading is at risk. We therefore advocate on this day, when we celebrate books and reading, that a year be set aside to help to build a greater national passion for reading in all forms in St. Kitts and Nevis. According to the governor of Tennessee's Early Literary Foundation website, and I quote, "Illiteracy and crime are connected. The Department of Justice states, and I further quote, that the link between academic failure and delinquency, violence and crime is welded to reading failure. Over 70% of inmates in America's prisons cannot read above a fourth grade level. Let us here in St. Kitts and Nevis do our part. Thank you for gracing us with your presence today, our lovely audience. Welcome, one and all, to this literary feast. Enjoy. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Daniel. I would now like to invite Ms. Dorothy Warner, the Secretary General. Who's going to do it? Okay. Ms. Abraham, okay. We will invite Mr. Andrew Abraham, the President of the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College, to give some opening remarks.
A pleasant good evening to everyone, and welcome to CFBC. Let me take this opportunity to welcome Ms. Dorothy Warner, National Commission on UNESCO here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Of course, past principal, Mrs. Marilyn Rogers. Welcome. Our Director of Library Resources, of course, Mrs. Daniel, and her team as yet. We have, of course, with us other members of faculty and staff here. I see our Dean of Teacher Education hiding in the back, but I still was able to find her around the corner behind the chair. Dean Pennyfeather is here. The media, one and all. But let me just pause for a moment and, of course, welcome every author that is present here physically and those that are joining us virtually as well in celebration of World Book Day, celebrated on April 23rd. In celebration of books, it is certainly an honor to gather, or at least be here to celebrate in the spirit of literary exploration and community engagement. Now, this forum stands as a testament to our commitment here at CFBC to fostering a vibrant literary culture within our college community and, of course, the Federation of St. Kitts and Nevis. This unique platform provides an opportunity for authors to showcase their work, share their journeys, and impart invaluable insights to our audience, both in person and those that are joining us virtually. As we embark on this journey together, I want us all to reflect on the objectives that underscores our gathering here. 1, providing a platform for authors of various genres. We aim to create a space where authors from diverse backgrounds and writing styles can come together to celebrate their craft and engage with an eager audience. inspiring, that's number 2, inspiring local writers, both spotlighting the talent within our college and local community. We aspire to inspire budding writers and ignite a passion for storytelling and creativity. 3, playing a leading role in literary development. The Clarence Fitzroy Bryan College takes pride in its role in advancing the literary landscape. Through initiatives like this forum, we aim to set ourselves apart as champions of literary excellence and cultural enrichment. Today, we are delighted to welcome 8 esteemed authors who will grace this forum, of course, with their presence. I would like to recognize Mr. Enoite Inanga, a member of faculty here at CFBC, Mrs. Carissa Kelly, member of faculty and, of course, our assistant registrar. As they say, save the best a little fella. Mr. Wayne Maynard is here as well. Nevis, if I stand correct. Miss Hansel Manners. Mr. Hansel Manners. Mrs. Elziva Coffey. Mrs. Willa Libert Travanier, who is joining us virtually. Mrs. Carol Mitchell, who is joining us virtually as well. Mr. Leonard Stapleton, who I don't think is here at the moment. There is another one. The name was called earlier, and please permit me. Shahada Jack. Yes, Jack. So let's give these authors, of course, a round of applause. Now, as we delve into the world of literature and storytelling, let us embrace the richness of our cultural heritage and the power of words to inspire, to educate, and to unite us all. I want to thank each and every one of you for joining us on this literary journey. Let the celebration of books begin. I thank you.
I hope I won't jump the gun again. I would now like to invite Ms. Dorothy Warner, the Secretary General of the St. Kitts and Nevis National Commission for UNESCO, who will give us the Director General of UNESCO's official message.
Chairperson, please allow me to adopt the protocol that has been established, and I'll just say good night all. I'm reading the message from Miss Audrey Azoulay, who is the Director General of UNESCO, and this message... My face? Oh, you want to see my face? You want to see this face? I wish to adopt the protocol that has been established and say good night, everyone. Good evening. I'm reading the message from the Director General of UNESCO, Ms. Audrey Azoulay, and this message is for World Book and Copyright Day 2024, 23rd April. The theme, Read Your Way, focuses on works in all languages. Books are invitations to travel and encounter others. With each new page turned, another world appears before your eyes. On World Book and Copyright Day 2024, we celebrate the power and beauty of books. Books, in all their forms, allow us to learn and keep ourselves informed. They also entertain us and help us to understand the world while offering a window into otherness. To unleash the full potential of books, we must reflect on the linguistic diversity of our world. However, this is far from being the case today, since most works are published in just a handful of languages, and digital technology raises the issue of linguistic homogenization. Yet, every written language brings with it a particular worldview with its symbols and values. As part of the International Decade of Indigenous Languages, launched in 2022, UNESCO is supporting the publication of books in both indigenous and regional languages. Since 2023, we have been working with publishing houses around the world to publish What Makes Us Human by Victor D. O. Santos and Anna Fortley, an illustration of children's books which celebrates linguistic and cultural richness in 14 languages, from Mapuche, Galician, and Maratha. UNESCO also supports the book industry in Africa, particularly the sector devoted to books for young people. To help recount the history of slavery and discuss its reverberations in today's world, in 2022, UNESCO launched the Bintu and Issa series in partnership with publishing house Langue de Sud. The goal of the series is to make children aware of the subject from an early age. Also, in partnership with Langue de Sud, and on the occasion of the International Publishing and Book Fair in Rabat, in May 2024, UNESCO will launch the first volume of the Les Ballades de Noor series. The book invites young Moroccans to learn about their UNESCO-listed cultural heritage from a different perspective. Finally, UNESCO supports the publishing sector and the power of reading through its network of World Book Capitals, designed to reinforce literacy education and promote the protection of copyright and freedom of expression. Strasbourg, France, has been designated the World Book Capital of 2024. The objective is to make books the preferred medium for both communicating the environmental concerns of our time and sharing the associated scientific knowledge. We are committed to supporting the fair remuneration of all those involved in the book industry, beginning with the authors. After all, behind every book, there's an entire chain of know-how and skills leading to its creation. On this day, UNESCO invites you not only to celebrate reading and culture, but also to make a commitment to support them. That was Audrey Azoulay's message. Now my message begins. Yes, I'm delighted to be here to participate in this evening's forum. And the authors are most of whom I know: Kelly, Stapleton, Manners, Coffey, Otley Michel, Inanga, Liber Tavernier, Maynard, and Jack. We celebrate you and the know-how and skills that produced your work or works. We appreciate your being at this Authors Forum to share with us and the world the insights and circumstances that resulted in your production. UNESCO continues to support authors and encourages everyone to respect their copyright. I have just returned from Curacao, where, as the Secretary General, I was engaged in a conference of Secretaries General around the Caribbean and Latin America. And it was my pleasure to take with me places of memory. Aha. So we are in the business of promoting our authors. Leonard Stapleton is a past co-worker, and I took that book with me. And in sharing in one of the session was entitled Caribbean Regional Program on the Slave Route and People of Enslaved Origin. And my sharing of that book generated quite a bit of discussion, to the point where we are trying to organize a task force to jumpstart discussions to research our individual and shared historical experiences. I have already committed Mr. Stapleton to being a part of that task force. Some of you have regional and international reach. Be justly proud of yourselves and encourage others to write, publish, and be exposed. Many congratulations to you, dear authors. May God continue to grant you the grace to be productive for a long time, so that others may experience the world through your eyes. Many thanks also to Mrs. Daniel and the CFBC Library Resource staff. Happy World Book and Copyright Day 2024. Thank you.
See, we live in a world where some are short, some are tall, and we have to make adjustments. Mrs. Carissa Kelly is a proud national of St. Kitts and Nevis. She is the mother of 4 children and a lover of history, a combination that has resulted in her desire to present historically themed books about the culture of St. Kitts and Nevis. Carissa believes that learning should be fun and engaging, and enjoys being able to facilitate this. I now invite Mrs. Carissa Kelly to give her presentation on her book, My ABC Book About St. Kitts and Nevis. Let us give her a round of applause.
Thank you. Chair, please kindly allow me, yes, to adopt the protocol that has been established. So thank you very much. Okay, great. So thank you very much, Mrs. Daniel. You're not in the room, but thank you for the invitation to my CFBC team. I'm not here as the assistant registrar today, so I can make a fool of myself. Just teasing, right? I'm just here as Carissa Kelly. So thank you for giving me the opportunity. I am truly, truly grateful. All right. So since I'm not wearing my CFBC hat, and I'm wearing my author's hat, let's get into it. I have a little treat for you. Hello, hello, my listening friends. Thank you for giving me your ear. I know you know your ABC, but do you know the ABC my way? I said, do you know the ABC my way? Are you ready? You ready? Come on, perhaps you're ready? Let's go. A is for African heritage. A is for African heritage. A is for African heritage. Do you know our African heritage? B is for Brimstone Hill Fortress, standing great and tall. Thank you, Nanga. It became a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1999. C is for Columbus, a voyager who came to our shore. He named this island San Cristobal, which means St. Christopher, of course. If you want more, you have to read the book. All right. So as you can see, yes. So as you can see, yes, it is indeed an ABC book, and it does cater to our little learners. So anybody that's in the early childhood sector, any child that's between, I should say, from preschool straight up to maybe grade 2 can certainly benefit from this book. So let's talk about a little bit about the background and the inspiration. So as you would have heard from the Bible, I am a mom of 4. And at the time when the book was written, I think it was during the COVID-19, yes, when we had the lockdown experience. And my children were small, but I wanted to present, history in a fun and exciting way. So I was like, okay, how can I tell them about our history? The tourists, they get it. They get all the historical data when they go on the tours, but our children, they don't get it. And we generally focus on our culture only during independence. We don't normally present it in a package. So that was the inspiration behind it. I wanted to give my children to present it in an easy way, in a fun way. I wanted to make history awesome, not boring, not heavy, not daunting, but exciting. And therefore, here came the ABC book about St. Kitts and Nevis. But in all honesty, I must say, this was not what I wanted to produce. This was what I wanted to produce. When I initially had the idea, I thought, well, okay, maybe what I can do is have a workbook. So, unfortunately, though, I wasn't able to produce the workbook at first. I was able to complete this first one. Now, this one, it was a challenge, I must admit. This was easy because it was just A, B, C, D, E, F, G. All I literally had to do was just think of something in our history to align with the particular letters in the alphabet. With some support from my family and from my CFBC team. So, for example, Ms. Laverne Brooks, she's actually our at the time, she was a communication studies and history lecturer. She's now the dean of ASGS. And our vice president of academic services and student affairs, she is, what should I say, she's my English guru, okay? So she was the one who actually reviewed it in addition to my sister, Mrs. Janine Heiliger, who teaches at Bastia High School. Anyway, let's return to this. So this experience was a little challenging, and I was very discouraged. I started and stopped many times. And I'm not certain if the other authors had the same experience, but I had that experience. But I'm very, very, very grateful for fellow authors. So for example, Dr. Ricardo Neal, another faculty member, who has written, I think, over 13 books, oh my God, but yes, who has written over 13 books. He came to visit my office, and he was like, Kelly, how are you getting along? And I'm like, Neil, I'm discouraged. And he said, do not think of anything else. He said, don't think about the marketing strategy. Don't think about the price. Don't think about who's going to use the book, what the book is going to be used for. He said, if it's in you, just write it. And I took his advice, and I'm so grateful that I did. And if you're here in the audience today, and you feel as if you have something inside of you that you want to get out, there's so many persons after I wrote my book that came to me and said, you know, Kerry is my alias. They said, Kerry, you know, I want to also write a book. Now, these are easy reads. And perhaps what you have to produce or what you want to produce might be a little bit more taxing. But take your time. Be patient. A bit by a bit. Do it bit by bit. I always think about the expression, if you want to eat an elephant, how would you eat it? One bite at a time. It just takes one word at a time, one thought at a time. Those thoughts and words, they're going to eventually become paragraphs, and those paragraphs, chapters, and in chapters, the entire book. So take your time, and thank you again for the invitation.
Could we give her another round of applause? There is a lot that we can learn from our ABC. Even though we are adults, there's a lot that we can learn. Hazel Manners. Hansel Manners. Mr. Hansel Manners was born in Nevis in 1944 and has been active in various areas of community life in both St. Kitts and Nevis. A graduate of the University of the West Indies, he served as a teacher, is an accountant and banker by profession, and has served in various capacities in both St. Kitts and Nevis, including being founding and first chairman of the board of directors of the Bank of Nevis Limited between 1985 and 1999, where he served as a director for 23 years, from 1985 to 2008. He has lived on both islands with approximately 25 years in St. Kitts. Following is a snapshot of his involvement in and contributions to the field of culture. Composer of the lyrics of the Charlestown Secondary School song, Industria et Virtuat, in the 1960s. Still the school song today, 50 years later, and hopefully forever. Composer of the Nevis folk song, Nevis, Lovely Nevis, known by all Nevisians. I hope Kittitians too. Well-known poet in Nevis with many public appearances, participant in and contributor to the annual Evening of Poetry held at the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College on World Poetry Day every year since its inception from 2019 to 2024. Author of the book, Bambouche, a collection of short stories of Nevis, all composed and written by the author as reflections of life on Nevis. Author of the book, Beyond the Bush and More, 2021, which he will present this evening. Former member of the board of directors of the Nevis Historical and Conservation Society, serving 1 3-year term as chairman. He represented St. Kitts and Nevis at a conference in Brazil in 2011, entitled The African Heritage in Brazil and the Caribbean, and contributed an article entitled The African Influence in Nevis to a book published in commemoration of this conference. The book is a collection of articles by country representatives. Help me to welcome to the podium Mr. Hansel Manners to present on his book, Beyond the Bush and More. Mr. Manners.
Here comes the height difference. This needs to be twisted a little more. Twist this way. Good afternoon to everybody. And thank you to Mrs. Daniel for the invitation to participate in this event today. I have been in this room several times, but as you heard, attending the poetry event, this is my first time at this type of event presenting a book. As you heard in my introduction, I'm from Nevis, and I like to refer to myself as a Kitty Nivision, because I've lived in both places, I have worked in both places, and what else should I say? I have my children here, and I still have a home here, etc., etc. So I'm truly from both islands. I'm here today to speak about my second book, and I thought I'd bring along the first one. The first one is Bambouche, which was published in 2001, and it's all stories, short stories of Nevis. I believe that my particular genre is story writing. I love to write stories. I love to write stories in the form of stories, in the form of poetry. I seem to think I just like to write. I just like to compose things. So I don't write necessarily factual things. I like to make up things, make up poetry, make up stories, etc. So this book was all made up stories, but not, I need to stress this, each story could have been true because they are meant to capture life in Nevis. So that is by way of introduction. Now, my second book, published in 2021, is titled Beyond the Bush and More. And this is what I would like to present. It also consists of stories. But whereas this one is fiction, but true to life, this one is not fiction. It is a description of what life used to be in Nevis. As you heard, and I keep coming back to this, I keep having to mention that I'm the oldest person in the room. Is that a compliment, or should I get worried about that? Well, I said it 1 month ago when I was here, and as I look around, I think I am, when I look at these young fellas, I am the oldest person in the room. As you heard, I was born in 1944, which means I'll be 80 this year. Sometimes we're afraid to say, but I'll be 80. So I'm in a great position to write about what life used to be in the 1940s, in the 1950s, in the 1960s, and that is what this book is about. Why such a book? I think that looking back, because it's about looking back at how life used to be. Looking back reminds us of how life used to be. And looking back gives us a sense of identity as to who we are, where we came from, the poverty we had to deal with, the food we had to eat, etc. It gives us a sense of identity, which is very important because we live now in 2024, but we need to know that life, and our children need to know that life wasn't always like this. It strikes me, and I think it must strike you, that when you look at the young children today, with cell phones and laptops and tablets, etc., they have no idea of what life used to be. My own daughter, who lives here and is in the 40s, in Nevis one day, was surprised when I told her that all this land around you was covered with sugar cane. And she said, sugar cane? She didn't. I thought she knew, but she didn't think that was the case. And so looking back helps. Looking back also provides a context in which we view ourselves. You know, I'm always intrigued when I listen to local people talking, whether it's here in England, New York, or wherever. I don't know whether you have noticed, but they always seem to compete among themselves as who used to be the poorest. Fellas say, well, I used to get only 2 Johnny cake. The fellas say, boy, I never even get Johnny cake, etc. They seem to be proud. And you know the reason for that is they are saying, in effect, this is, look at me now. Look at me now. And that is where I came from. Because that is a story of triumph, that I could have moved from the wooden house in Gingerland, where I didn't get any Johnny cakes, and look at me now. So, There are some people who have read my book. One lady from New York said, Mr. Manners, it took me back, and I so enjoyed reliving the days of my youth, etc. Looking back reminds us that we are not product of our own efforts, that we might look nice and dandy now and grown up and whatnot, but there are lots of people who helped us along the way because we had difficulties. We all had difficulties along the way. Poor houses, no money, etc., etc. And so we have a duty to pass all this on to the younger generation. I tell the story that when it's all in the book, but I'll mention it now. I did some studies in England in 1981, and it struck me that at that time, cell phones never existed. And I hardly saw a computer, and that was 1981. So you can imagine the children of today would find it difficult to understand what the 50s were like. The book is in 3 sections. It's 216 pages. And don't get frightened by the pages, because I don't like to boast, but my aim was to write stories, and these are true stories, but to write them in a way that makes it interesting and pleasant to read. Only the reader can decide whether I have succeeded, but that was my aim, because I think writing should be enjoyable. It's in 3 sections. The first section is about Nevis as it was, 1940s to the 1960s. All about the food we used to eat, the clothes we used to wear, church life, social life, school life. And I find the chapter on school life very interesting. I went to the chapel school in Gingerland in the 1950s, yes, that time. And talking about education as it was in those days, of the songs we used to sing. We grew up like little Englishmen. You don't have that experience now. But everything they taught was about England. The songs were about England. The poems were about England. And everything was about England. And I had a whole chapter on that because it's something to read about, to find about what life used to be. That is how it used to be. The second section is about poetry. And the reason why I did that, and I forgot to tell a little story, which is in the book. I was driving through Bastia with my grandchild about 9 years ago. And she popped a question at me, which I recounted here. She said, "Grandpa, are you rich?" And I was shocked. I was really taking them out to a restaurant. So I guess she said, "Are you rich?" I said, "No, I'm not rich." She said, "Why? She said, "You're driving a new car. Your house is nice." I guess, okay. And it struck me that that is all she knew. I have a new car. House is okay. She would not know about the way I grew up and the difficulties we had. And that is what I try to tell in this book. So the second section is about poetry. As I said, I love to write poetry, and there's several here. I won't go into them. I have done some of them at the poetry events here. The third section is about a personal experience. And I put all 3 together because, as I say in the introduction, at my age, I don't know whether I'll have a chance to write another book. So I put everything in. The third section is a personal experience. I used to be a teacher, way back way. I attended the Antigua's Teachers College in 1966 to 68, before a lot of you were born. So I'm a trained teacher. But I wanted, when I left university, to my disappointment, they placed me in St. Kitts. And I taught at the Bastia High with Miss, what's her name again? Cable, Mrs. Cable, etc. But after 2 years, I thought I wanted to study something more. I said, I don't think I want to be a teacher all my life. No disrespect to teachers, but I thought I wanted to do something more. The long and short is, I decided to become an accountant. And I tell the story of that tumultuous journey, because it was. Because there I was, never did accounting in school. It was not taught in my time. I studied history and economics. And I wanted to become an accountant. and I became an accountant, but it was a rough journey. And section 3 is about that. I went off to England and sometimes cry when I tell the story. My last child was 6 months old, and my wife had 3. The last one was 6, but I left and went to England. I didn't do it selfishly. I was doing it for the family, but it sounds a bit hard now. My son couldn't walk. But I tell the whole story. I told everything. I failed exams. I ended up in a coal building. I had to work in a factory. The whole story is there. And some people tell me that's the most interesting part because it's true to life, etc., etc. At the end of it all, when I was ready to come home, my father died, and I didn't reach in time for his funeral because of a strike. There was a strike at the airport, and they said, stay in the hotel for. So I stayed in a hotel at the airport, and when my father's funeral was taking place on the Friday afternoon, I landed in Antigua and came to Nevis the next morning. So a sad ending too. So that's the nature of the book, storytelling, and I hope people find it interesting just to see how life used to be. That's my book. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Manners. It is always interesting to go back, to take a walk down memory lane and to understand how life used to be. Thank you very much. Carol Mitchell has published 18 books for children, including 3 with HarperCollins, the UK. Some of her books have received Caribbean Literacy Awards. She holds an MFA from George Mason University and is a fellow of the Virginia Center for Creative Arts. Miss Mitchell's short stories have appeared in several Caribbean journals, and she reviews books on her blog and for various journals. 4 of her short stories have been long listed for the Commonwealth Short Story Prize. She lives and teaches writing in Virginia. Let us now welcome Carol Mitchell to give her presentation on her book, What Start Bad a Morning. She is going to join us, of course, virtually.
Hi, good afternoon. Can you all hear me? Can you just confirm that you can hear me, okay? Hello? Okay, wonderful. So, good afternoon. I'd like to begin by adopting the protocol which has already been established, please. So I'm Carol Mitchell, and I'm really excited. Thank you so much for inviting me to come and speak here today about my latest book, which is What Start Bad a Morning. I know it's probably looking backwards. I'm not sure if it looks backwards to you all, but I'm, very always happy and always excited to come and talk about writing. My foray into writing is similar to Mrs. Kelly, I think, where in terms of I started writing because I wanted to have a particular type of book for my children who were avid readers at the time, and many of you all have heard this story before. I was inspired by a wonderful, wonderful Brimstone Hill. And that was, my foray into writing was through that. I wrote several children's books, as was mentioned, and then I decided to. A friend of mine said to me once, he's like, you're doing a great job, but there's some things you need to learn. And as an academic, I went and I said, okay. And I went to school, did an MFA, and as part of my MFA program, I began writing this book. So I've always written character-driven stories and books, which means that what I'm really interested in is learning about, what makes us human, what makes us different, and thinking about that. And even though my books are all set in the Caribbean in some way or the other, that's always at the heart of what I'm trying to get at. Like, what are we doing together here on this on this planet? How can we work together, support each other? What drives us? All that sort of thing. So, in this book that I just read, it sort of really speaks to the whole idea of how we in the Caribbean deal with trauma. And in the story, the main character, Amaya, she has had this really awful thing happen to her when she was 17. And instead of getting the kind of support that she needed, come tell me, how can we help? How can we, let's talk about this. Let's work through what you've experienced. Instead, she was kind of told, oh, just keep it moving. It's fine. What you worried about that for? It was really traumatic if you read the book. And so I was just sort of exploring this whole idea of if you build a life on that sort of experience, then as an adult, as much as you're performing as someone who is doing well and who's, has the husband and the children and the everything, all the balls up in the air and moving them, are you really whole, and are you really functioning um, as a whole person? And so that's kind of what the book is all about. And the title, What Start Bad in Morning, sort of speaks to that, because it's pretty much saying that if something started badly in the very beginning, unless you deal with that and come to terms with that in some way, you can't really build a foundation on that. You have to sort it out. It's not gonna, the whole proverb is what go on bad in the morning can't end good at evening. But of course I couldn't put Guan in the title, but the the whole idea is that of renewing and coming to terms with your past and using that then as a much firmer ground on which to build and to continue and to have a really positive trajectory. So that's sort of what I was exploring in this book, What Start Bad in Morning. And it was published in September. Actually, it was published on St. Kitts Independence Day, which was not intentional by the publisher, but I was really excited about that. I'll always remember the date on which it was published, and it'll always be a celebration for me. So that was really great. But one of the things I wanted to talk about, and as I was listening to some of the other speakers, it really sort of, it was just this ongoing theme. Mrs. Daniel was talking about the importance of reading, which is something I can't stress enough. How that kind of links really back to the ability to write. But I also was listening to when Mrs. Kelly was talking about the influences she had, the support that she had, the encouragement that she had from other people. And I think that sometimes when we think about authors, we envisage a lone person sitting at a typewriter, typing away, lost in their own world, lost in their own thoughts. A lot of people come to me, they're worried about sharing their work because they're worried about being copied, about their ideas being stolen. And this sort of approach to writing really holds us back in a very real way. This book that I put out, if you read the acknowledgements, I I linked the progression of it to this family tree that they talk about in Africa, where one person is helping the next. You know, from the beginning of the book, from the encouragement that I got from my lecturers, then I went to a writing retreat, and someone there I read a bit of it, and someone there spoke to their agent, and their agent took me on, and it was just this continuation of people reaching out and helping and saying, "Oh, I can bring you to the next level. I can bring you to the next level." And it's so important that for us as writers here and for people who are interested in being writing to talk about what you want, talk about what you want to achieve. Let people know that you want to write this book about XYZ, and people will lend you their support. They will lend you their encouragement, their experience, and sometimes their contacts. And so it's a two-way street, of course. You know, we have to learn to do that and also to learn to ask for it. But just in my experiences, that's really been what has been very helpful to getting my books and my stories. From the very first one, you know, I had a lot of doubts about whether I could write a book, and I was encouraged to do it and encouraged along the way, and writing one word and another word and another word until eventually I had a book. And so I really appreciate this idea of community in writing and how important that is. And even many of you might know, I not only write, but I'm also involved with Caribbean Reads Publishing, which is a publishing company. And even with that, you know, one of the reasons that we were able to grow was in part because some of our authors came on board as partners. One of them, very crucial member of our team, is Heidi Fagerberg, who lives in St. Kitts and who provides a lot of our support down there. And then we made partnerships with groups like Hands Across the Sea, which is a really important I'm losing my words, but they're very important in the literacy field in the Eastern Caribbean. They provide books. They're a nonprofit, and they collect money and they raise money and then provide books to libraries and school libraries. And so, you know, all of these connections that we've made along the way have really been so instrumental in the growth that Caribbean Reads has been able to have and that I have been able to have as an author. So I guess I want to just leave if I'm going to give any sort of encouragement to people who are interested in writing, is, you know, to talk about it. Let people know what you want to do, and encourage and to those who are already making it, who are already having some level of success, who have at least completed a book, which is in and of itself a great level of success, just actually finishing the product, to also be encouraging and to provide guidance and their experience. So again, thank you so much for having me. It's really always a pleasure to talk about my book, to talk about writing, and I'm really happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Mitchell, for your valuable contribution. What start bad a morning can come good at evening. I think the Jamaicans have popularized that saying. Willa Liebert Tavernier was born and raised in St. Kitts. She is a mother who loves crafting, traveling, and gardening. An avid reader, Willa is continually interested in teaching, learning, and exchanging ideas. She is the author of the children's book, Pink is for Boys, which addresses gender stereotypes. Willa is currently employed as the Research Impact and Open Scholarship Librarian at Indiana University, Bloomington, where she works with publication data, digital archiving, and public open digital scholarship, and is instructor of record for the undergraduate academic editing and publishing course. On invitation, Willa has guest lectured for the School of Education, the Department of African American and African Diaspora Studies, the Ludi School of Informatics, Computing, and Engineering, the Hamilton Lugar School of Global and International Studies, and nationally for the American Library Association Government Documents Roundtable, and the Association of College and Research Libraries, Politics, Policy, and International Relations section. In addition to her MA in Library and Information Science, Willa holds a graduate certificate in college teaching, a Master of Laws in International Business Law, an LLB from education from the Norman Manley Law School. Help me to welcome Miss Willa Liebert Tavernier, who will speak to her book, Liberatory Librarianship.
Hello, good evening. I just want to ensure that you can hear me in the room as well. Okay, thank you. And I adopt the protocol established by the previous speakers, and I want to thank you so much for inviting me to speak on my recently co-authored chapter, not the entire book, in the recently released volume, Liberatory Librarianship, published by American Library Association Editions. The chapter, which is called Elevating Diverse Voices in Service of Liberatory Librarianship, was collaboratively authored with two other librarians. And academic publishing bears a lot of similarities to commercial publishing in that we submit a draft, it undergoes review, either peer review or editorial review by experts in a particular field. And most often you receive comments coming out of the review recommending revisions, and this might go through several rounds before it's finally accepted for publication, which is very different from self-publishing, which is what I did for my children's book on my own. But this chapter focuses on building a public open digital exhibit in collaboration with students that address the failures or complicity of the state in violence against Black communities in the United States over a 200-year period, the Land Wealth Liberation Digital Resource. And so in my section, I focused on removing barriers to students from historically excluded backgrounds in creating the exhibit, which is a means of addressing one aspect of the so-called digital divide, so they could build digital skills and confidence in their abilities as digital creators. My interest in public open digital scholarship started in library school, and specifically with my dissertation, which focused on how digital tools can build or rebuild identity with a focus on memory institutions in the West Indies. And I must acknowledge the help and support of our late National Archivist, Mrs. O'Flaherty, when I was doing that project. And the idea behind this was questioning who controls the representation of our countries, our region, our culture, our heritage, and most importantly, our people. So the internet is where most people turn for information. And when they do this, what is the view they have of, for example, St. Kitts and Nevis? Is it a full picture of all that we are, or is it tailored just for what we think a specific audience wants? So if it's not a full picture, what can we do to take ownership of that representation? Because all or most of us engage with digital tools on a daily basis, but how are we engaging with it as consumers or as creators? And then if we are engaging as creators, what are we creating? Are we engaging in creative, meaningful, and ethical ways that serve our communities? So the idea behind my work around public open digital scholarship is that having access to digital technology is not enough, because it's not really about the technology, it's about the people. So social and emotional learning has to be the foundation for digital literacy, so that we can use technology in beneficial ways, and so that we can present a broader image of ourselves, for ourselves, and then in that process, of course, for the outside world. Sometimes, like in the Language Liberation Project, we're using digital tools to tell our own stories and to push back against inaccurate narratives that those persons who control knowledge production put out, whether that's academic knowledge, mainstream media, or public memory. We have to be the ones who shape the construction of knowledge about us, and to decide to use digital tools in genuine, expressive, and creative ways that build up and not pull down. We have to be the ones who produce knowledge about ourselves, because when we do this, we have the ability to produce what we need and to shape discourse around our needs and not some external agenda. And so recently, following that, I've been given the opportunity to work with the Clarence Fitzroy Bryan College on some projects that would be forthcoming. And it was very encouraging to see essentially that this institution is more than on board, really at the forefront of thinking along those same lines. So once again, thank you for inviting me to speak, and I'm happy to answer any questions later.
We thank you very much, Mrs. Willa Liebert Tavernier, for your presentation. We will now have a special item by Miss Shahada Jack. Meet Shahada Jack, who is a 19-year-old bilingual spoken word poet, performer, human rights activist, and student of life from Toronto. Recently releasing her debut single, My Mother's Daughter, she has graced 80+ stages, including the renowned history stage, Shahada, a proud graduate of the Remix Project, weaves her diverse cultural background into her powerful poetry, addressing human rights, the Black experience, and the challenges of adolescence. Named Boys and Girls Club of Canada's 2022 National Youth of the Year, and recognized as one of Streets of Toronto's most inspirational women of 2022. Shahada invites you to explore her world through her debut book, Underrated Royalty, available on Amazon. Miss Shahada Jack. apparently she hasn't logged in as yet, so we'll move on. We'll move on to Miss Elziva Coffey. Elziva Coffey is an educator, guidance counselor, and social skills trainer. She has over 3 decades of work experience with young people and is committed to high ethical standards and development of self and others. She has successfully supported many to embrace psychological and practical steps towards achieving purpose and focus in their lives. She earned a diploma in youth in development work from the University of the West Indies, a diploma in child psychology from Kilroy's College, and a Master of Business Administration looking at employee relations from the University of Leicester. Elziva enjoys reading, gardening, traveling, and coaching others to be better versions of themselves. She has donated a copy of her book to each of the Leeward Islands debating competition teams who participated in 2024 right here in St. Kitts. The CFBC Debating Society thanks her for her generosity. Mrs. Coffey.
Good evening, all. Welcome and thank you for coming to this forum. I want to say thanks, especially to Mrs. Daniel for including me on this panel, and congratulations as well to the fellow panelists, authors in your own rights. I am very happy this evening to see some of my former principals and head teachers in the person of Mrs. Rogers and Mrs. Cable. I see a parent of one of my former students, Mr. Manners. I see one of my former students, Willa, as one of the authors. You could understand the level of pride I am feeling this evening. So, I am here to talk about my book. It's a teeny, tiny book entitled It Matters Life Skills Handbook. Handbook, of course, because it could easily be held in my hand, all right? So that is very strategic. Now, the book focuses really on exploring skills that would contribute to positive growth and development and fulfillment in life. It was the Greek philosopher Aristotle who said, "Good habits developed in youths make all the difference." Over the years, when I've interacted with young persons within and outside of the classroom, I noticed that those who possess these particular skills, which I like to call critical supports, those are the ones who tend to do better personally and professionally on the job. So the book looks at 45 critical life skills that are important for growth and development. And the skills we are talking about in this book are not so much the practical, hands-on one, like money management or meal planning and stuff like that. The book looks at the psycho-social skills, the cognitive mindsets that would contribute to positive growth and development. It actually, as small as this book is, it actually features 45 of them. We have some very common and ordinary ones, things like accountability, we have gratitude, those basic ones. And it also looks at some that are not so commonplace, things like judiciousness and zeal. And interestingly, just like you, Carissa, it also follows alphabetically. So the skills that are featured in the book are arranged alphabetically from A to Z, of course, okay? Now, at the end of each life skill, there is a supporting quotation. And these quotations come from a variety of persons. Again, some known and maybe some not so known. But the purpose of the quotations at the end of the life skill is to underscore the importance of this skill that has been outlined and defined in the book. The quotations also seek to add value by inspiring and challenging persons who engage with the book so that they can aspire to be their best self, okay? Now, the book is very interactive. There are many opportunities for users of this book to engage with it. At the end of each of the life skill, there's a little section that would allow persons to record and to reflect their own thinking and musing. And truth be told, real learning and growth and development happens from self-reflection. So the book gives a lot of opportunities for that. I am hoping that with this book, it would help to stimulate discussion, primarily on the individual level, starting with us as individuals, also within family settings, within other group settings, be it schools, be it churches, clubs, the workplace, etc. I am really hoping that it would start to stimulate dialogue, and with the hope that it would lead to transformation, positive transformation in persons individually as well as in groups. I want to thank you very much for your attention, and I do look forward to your questions and comments later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Cuffey. Of course, we all, from time to time, we need to learn some life skills. So I'm sure that that handbook would come in very handy. A handbook coming in very handy. A handy handbook. We will now have this special item from Miss Shahada Jack.
Afternoon. Can you hear me? I just get a reaction in the chat, a reaction on the camera. I know it was a Zoom. There's technical difficulties. Perfect. Well, my name's Shahada Jack. Thank you so much for having me today. I am a spoken word artist, youth activist, and most importantly, I like to say I am a student of life. I wish I could be there with you all in the room. I wish I could see you and feel your energy and hear the beautiful stories that you're sharing today. But I am in Vancouver right now working and competing, but I'm so honored to still be here in a virtual space. I'll be sharing a few poems with you today, and these poems are from my book, Underrated Royalty. It's a book of poetry and photography from a grant that I received at the age of 17 from an arts organization in my city of Toronto in Canada. And I was able to have this grant that was made for Black artists to create their own tangible work. And I decided to create a book of my poetry from ages 12 to 17 to highlight my community, to highlight the Black stories, especially in Canada, but also the stories of my Caribbean heritage and roots. My family comes from St. Vincent. And so it's really important for me that I was able to put out something that honored my history, but also created something new for youth, created something for youth to see themselves in. So in this first piece I have to share with you all today, titled Underrated Royalty, shines a light on what it means to be documenting our legacies. As authors and poets, and if you're a singer or even a dancer, these are ancestral forms of storytelling. We are doing the active work of documenting our stories, of telling our truths, for making sure that generations and generations and generations beyond us don't forget our names, don't forget our traditions and our cultures, and simply our stories. So this is underrated royalty. And with poetry, even though I can't hear you, I'll still know. You gotta snap, give me a stomp your feet if there's things that I share today that can resonate with you, that hit you right here, that you say, I needed to hear that today. I needed that today. I felt that. So even though I'm not there with you, this is a piece for all of us. It's more than a performance, it's a collective experience. So this is underrated royalty. Dear colonizer, master of our history, aren't you tired? Aren't you tired of being the reason why some have no roots to claim? Confused as to why they can't find their motherland in their name? Diluted by the tongue of the oppressor, the oppressors being your ancestors. Lost in the confusion of the diffusion of what we now call a historical illusion. The rich names of Nubian kings and queens now lost to the slave deemed undeserving of a name of meaning. The rich names of Nubian kings and queens altered to fit the American dream. The rich names of Nubian kings and queens. Nefertiti, Makeda, Kandake, Asantua emerge as Laquisha, Uniqua, Monisha, known as the ghetto names. Names your broken tongues butcher no matter how hard my people struggle to assimilate to your television expectations. They're unrecognizable to your westernized filter. You've spent lifetimes attempting to erase Black beauty from the hands of time with your false narratives pacifying your fear of the strength of our culture with the notion that you can prevent melanated magnificence in future generations with racial extermination. You've dedicated your living to discrediting my Blackness, exposing your envy of my beautiful Black grace with your hidden Black face, finding the political correctness of cultural appropriation, its beauty dull in your interpretation, causing a societal revelation that Black is beautiful, but only on a Black queen. That Black is powerful, but only in the hands of a Black being. We are underrated royalty. Once again, that piece was titled Underrated Royalty. It's a reminder to take up space, that our words deserve to exist on spaces, on pages, that our words deserve to exist in each room we step in. So that was, once again, Underrated Royalty. The next and final piece I have for you all is a piece that I hold very close to my heart. A few years ago, it was about 2 years ago now, I got to work with a phenomenal group of young ladies between the ages of 10 to 14. Thank you for the reactions in the chat. From the ages of 10 to 14, I got to work with some young ladies from different schools, and we had a program called Her Story. And in that program, we had conversations of what does it mean to be a girl today? To have conversations of identity, to have conversations that really weren't limited, and that they had a safe space to truly express themselves. And once we had those conversations, we had a moment of what does that look like on the page? When you sit and you write your story, whether it's journaling or poetry, that's kind of like looking in a mirror. And when you look in that mirror, what is the story being reflected back at you? So through those conversations, in those writing sessions, I was able to write my own piece titled Herstory, inspired by the program. And with that poem and with the young girls, we were able to have our own exhibit in an art gallery in my city, where these girls were able to see their faces in large print on walls with their words, with my words. And why I share this story and I choose to share this poem today is that I know I said earlier that a piece of why we write and create literature is to document our stories and to archive and to acknowledge that one day we will be someone's ancestor. Another piece of why we write and kind of the result of writing is representation. It's the fact that a lot of youth today and in generations before us, if they couldn't see it, they couldn't believe it. And it was nearly impossible to dream it. So we write to share our stories and to show people you're not alone in your truth and in your journey, that we have so many shared experiences, but that also as a people, we exist in so many different ways. We excel in so many different ways. We shine in so many different ways. We're not only daughters and sons and mothers and sisters, we're also doctors and lawyers and artists and politicians, but we have to show that we deserve and we have earned the right to tell our own narrative, to be the authors of our own stories. And that's truly what Herstory is about. So once again, don't be shy to snap, to stomp your feet, to give me a I'm taking in all this energy. So this is Herstory. Do you know your story? The one that isn't inherently prefixed by the word his. The one that doesn't force womanhood into a monolithic experience. Do you know your story? The one that is still yet to be written, the one that will someday be the epilogue of your ancestors' greatest wishes. Do you know your story? The one that will someday be the blueprint of your unforgettable legacy, the one that doesn't hide your moments of vulnerability, the one that doesn't shame your fears into disastrous silence. Know that your story is more than institutional expectation and societal perception. Your worth is more than profitable trauma, stolen features, or extorted identity. There is more to you than beauty, body, pain. There is a sacred power in your gifted name, a hidden memory in the mother tongue that speaks it. There are buried queens that could have only dreamed of your existence. There are little girls who found purpose in your footprints. Young woman, I hope you know. You are the joy that dances in your laughter. You are the strength in your curls. You are the hope that is birthed in despair. You're more than a hashtag. You are the soul that sparks the movement. You are the vessel of endless possibilities that shine every time you open your eyes. You are the champion of herstory when history is challenged. You are girl, woman, human. You are writer, protagonist, illustrator, survivor, dreamer, and risk taker of a reality that screams to the world that our stories are enough. Once again, that was Herstory. Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, Sunita, for inviting me today. It's absolutely important that we hold space for each other, that we give our mentors their flowers while they're still here, that we reflect on the pieces of literature that we're writing and what they mean for us and what they do for us as a people. So once again, thank you so much. Wish I could be there with you, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your event today.
Thank you very much, Shahada Jack. Do you know your story? We are Nubian kings and queens whose royalty has been underrated. I will now present you with Mr. Inowet Inanga. Enowet, how do you pronounce that? Enoite. Enoite Inanga. I think it's an African name, right? Nigerian. Inoite Inanga. If you combine a little bit of quirkiness and with humor, with creativity, aptitude for serial entrepreneurship, and add a deep appreciation for technology, teaching, a healthy aptitude for family, that just might be the making of an author with an interesting story to tell. Inoite Inanga is a melting pot of several talents, cultures, and experiences. Born to Ino L. Inanga and Amorel E. Inanga, he was obviously influenced by both of his parents, as they were both educators and authors. Being a proud girl dad, it is of no surprise that his first published book was not only influenced by her, but it technically is also all about her, but from a different perspective. You see, the creation of life has got to be one of the most complex and amazing feats of science. His book, The Becoming of Adiaha, is that how it's pronounced? Adia. Adia. Inside Out takes you on an imaginative journey where there is life before the creation of life itself. A fun world with experiences that you can relate to. Laughter, friendship, loss, pain, joy, lessons, adventures, all culminating towards creating and becoming Adia, his first daughter. We welcome Inoite Inanga to share his story. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My book hasn't been printed or anything. It's all on Amazon on ebook. So this is a bit of a demonstrative presentation. So I'm going to show you guys parts of the book because it is illustrated. And so I am trying to share my screen so you guys can see it in here, which is easy because I have an HDMI cord, but the people online won't see it. So I'm waiting for Damien to allow me to share my screen. This is a host participant has disabled participant screen sharing. Could you enable that for me, please? In 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Nothing? Okay, while that's happening, so the book, The Becoming of Adia Inside Out. That's not the full title of the book. The subtitle is The Not So True But Funny Sperm and the Egg Story of How My Daughter Came Into Being. Right. It's a story about essentially the sperm and the egg without ever using any of those words. It's a story about biology without ever using any of those words or connotations associated with the biology. It is essentially a story of friendship, joy. Take up my mic. Friendship, joy, laughter. Can my screen be shared yet? Not yet. Okay. And camaraderie. Okay, I'm just going to show you guys what's on the screen. We'll disable this whole Zoom situation. Hold on. Press 1. Get my cord. And we go here. And hopefully this works. So those online, I'm sorry about this. All right. Can you guys see my screen? It's coming? Okay, great. Not this time around. Not this time around. All right, that's the cover of the book. As you can see, there are some friends that look very sperm-like. They all have names, and there is a character that's apparently my character over here. That's before I was, before she was. And that's apparently the egg that was fertilized. Okay? Right, the sperm is swimming to the egg, and the egg is happy because she sees this strong, strapping sperm swimming towards her. So the history behind this story, you guys are familiar with the Commonwealth Short Story Contest and stuff like that? Right, in 2019, a good friend of mine suggested that, we enter into this competition. She wrote her story, I wrote mine. I did not know what I was going to write on. And I said, how can I come up with a lot of words? I can't find anything to write about except, okay, my daughter, she's in my life every day. I'm learning a lot about what it's like to be a father, especially being a girl dad. And I said, you know what, I can write this story. And as I started to write, it just, like people who say they have writers, but I can't understand what that is. But as I started to just write, everything was just flowing and flowing and flowing and flowing and flowing. And so I ended up writing this story. And I'm going to start, and I don't think you can appreciate what it is about until I read some excerpts from it about how it actually starts and what it goes towards. So I'm going to go to the first page. Okay, is this thing going to work? Okay, great. Let's go down here. Okay. All right, this is how it starts. 2 months until D-Day. Okay, as adults, we know what D-Day is. But over here, kids can read this book and still see a lot of joy and fun in it because there are no PG-13 or R-rated words ever used in the book. So it was written in such a way that adults can read the book and know exactly what was going on, and kids can read the book and still have a laugh about what was going on. So the day started just as every other day started. Little Larry, my middle name is Larry, got up from his living quarters and he let out an audible yawn, stretched his arms, and reached underneath his bed to where he kept one of his most prized possessions. It was an old magazine he'd found discarded in the streets a few weeks ago. I mean, who knows, boys keep these magazines underneath the beds. Now, there are little cameos or Easter eggs in the illustrations. Illustrations here, as you can see, I'm half Nigerian and I am half Kittian. So you can see there's a Nigerian flag over here and there's the St. Kitts flag over here, and that's little Larry in the room. In his bedroom, he's woken up and he's reading his little magazine. All right, the magazine called Eggs for Life was all about the legendary and elusive eggs of life and contained pictures and articles. It's still doing this thing. Articles of different types of eggs. He could care less about the articles. It was the pictures that he was really excited about that intrigued him. Okay. And so, especially as there was some of the most beautiful eggs he had ever laid his eyes on. So as little Larry flipped through the page of the magazine, he thought silently to himself, one day I'm going to get to touch one. Okay? All right, let me go towards page 10. and read another excerpt from here. All right, so this is the other side, okay? So far, far away, in the middle of the Sea of Tranquility, if this thing would stop acting up, was an island with pink sand, pink trees of varying hues, pink grass, pink fruits, and lots of eggs. These were the sacred eggs of life that the seamen, S-E-A-M-E-N, coveted so much, but little did it know that on this island, stop flashing, these eggs had legend stories of their own. So, on the other side, the seamen had legend stories about these eggs, and these eggs also had legend stories about, wow, some big strapping something is supposed to come over and whisk us away. So, let's see what these said. Come on, don't disappoint me, technology. But they were not very nice to each other. Okay? Sassy Carrie was quite the diva egg. She always wanted to be prepared for her seaman that their legends fondly spoke of. And while she looked outright beautiful, she had a very hot mouth. She would often hear from the other eggs, "Oh, you're going to scare that seaman away with that mouth of yours." And she says, "That's your own business. I always get what I want." Okay? Let's go to another page. I'm just rushing through this because I want you guys to get your appetite for this book. Page 24. Page 24. Page 24. Come on. Okay, 3 days until D-Day. Back on the island, Sassy Carrie was in her element. She knew her turn was coming up very soon. But all she cared about was feeling good and looking good for what she hoped would be a magical encounter with one of the strongest, most intelligent, and fastest seamen that would be coming. Okay, back on the vessel, there was a perceptible sense of agitation permeating amongst the seamen. Look, look, that's the red light. It's happening. It's happening. Oh, I can't believe it's actually happening. That was little Harry getting all excited. The waiting area was starting to get hotter with steam. Okay? Starting to get hotter with steam. This thing is flashing. Okay, I'm going to remove this. With steam, as the steam workers frantically worked hard to build up enough pressure to push out all of these seamen, it was like poetry in motion to see them working in tandem, swapping out for replacements whenever they got tired. The pressure built up as the temperature rose by the minute. All of the seamen were agitated and couldn't wait to get out of the heat. They all let out a collective primal roar as the pressure, are you kidding me? I'm going to take this off. As the pressure, come on, technology, you're disappointing me today. They all let out as the pressure reached its highest peak. And so, okay, I'm being disappointed by technology. Anyway, the book is about the becoming of my daughter, Inside Out. There's lots of biology that happens in this book, and I actually had to go and read on what really happens and find a creative way to depict this. So every sperm dies except for one, and they go to sperm heaven, and they are looking down and giving their own feedback on what happened and how they died. And words of encouragement. And so there's a lot of lessons to be learned in this book. So the book ends just as the sperm touches the egg, which means there's part 2, which is going to be 9 chapters long. It's going to be 9. I'm giving you guys a little preview to what's going to happen. I'm going to speak it into existence because I haven't written yet. So part 2 happens where they enter in this magical creation, but the next thing that happens is there's a void. There's this big open space, and there's an orb in the middle, and a book just appears with 9 chapters. And so you find these 2 people bickering, arguing on what to do, what color the hair is going to be, which people to hire, what to do, and the entire process that could probably take place. Your imagination on what life is like to be created inside out, the whole DNA sequencing, the whole everything in a creative way inside out. So that's going to be 9 chapters on that tension that emulates the tension between co-parenting, you know, where you think things should go this way and the other person thinks with that. Maybe that's what's happening inside. We don't know. So I'm going to take us on a journey into that, 9 chapters, and then part 3 is going to be the first year, right? Inside Out. And so my goal is to really to have this turn into a streaming series on Netflix. And I'm speaking that into existence because, like I said, the illustrations give for that type of life to happen. So the last thing I'm going to show you is my favorite illustration. And I want you guys to just see if you can let your imaginations run a little bit wild. As you can see, that is the departure area, the departure lounge. As you can see, it's not doing it, it's not thinging yet. Okay, that's it. So that's where the coal workers have been working. There's a long little tube that all these guys have been waiting to be squeezed out, and that's the steam chamber. And there are, again, it's going to build up all of that pressure, and all of these guys are waiting to be just pushed out through this exciting tube into anything. There are instances where it ends up into the abyss of toiletoria. There are instances where it ends up into the rubber flubber. Again, these are things that they're funny things, right? But everybody dies. And there was a part in the book where I actually cried because one of the characters sacrificed his life for my character to make it, right? And do you know what he did? He said, it looks like that egg is a piece of work. So you go. I'm good on this part where I am. So you guys want to read this book? It's on Amazon. Just look for it, and it's $3.99. And you will be sure to get a wonderful laugh and support this movement in this creative space of looking at things from a different perspective. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Inanga. I think another name for that book could have been The Story of When the Egg Met Semen. When the egg met semen, and all that took place after that. Thank you very much. We are going to now invite Pastor Wayne Maynard. Pastor Wayne Maynard was born and raised on the island of Nevis. He had the privilege of growing up in a pastor's family where he was molded and taught the things of God. He accepted Jesus Christ as his personal Lord and Savior at an early age and was actively involved in the ministry of the Shiloh Baptist Church in a variety of different areas, including playing the piano, preaching, and working with young people. His adolescent years were greatly impacted by mentoring from his youth leader. Healthy relationships with other young people who were serving God, and his years in the Nevis Cadet Corps. He excelled academically in high school and sixth form, and then furthered his education in the USA, where he received a bachelor's and master's degree in computer science and information systems technology, respectively. He married his best friend, Shanetta Smith, in 1999, and they began their new life together in Virginia, where they attended the Crossroads Baptist Church. This church helped them tremendously to grow spiritually through challenging preaching and good Christian examples. Their union produced two beautiful children, Michaela, 19, and Micah, 15. During a successful 15-year career as a software engineer, Pastor Maynard felt the call of God in his life to be involved in full-time ministry in the work of God. He began making plans to return home to Nevis, where he felt God wanted him and his family to serve. That transition was completed in February 2015. He became the senior pastor of the Shiloh Baptist Church in October 2015, where he continues to serve in a variety of different areas, including directing the choir and leading other ministries. He authored and published his first book, Too Blessed to Make a Mess. In 2023, under his own label, Strive for the Prize Books. He is passionate and dedicated to helping people fulfill their God-given purpose and is thrilled to play a part in making that happen. Please help me in welcoming Pastor Wayne Maynard.
Good evening, everyone. I'm truly humbled and honored to have the opportunity to be here this evening for this Authors Forum. I'd like to say thank you so very much to Mrs. Sonita Daniel for her invitation, and also congratulate each and every one of the authors here on this panel and other authors in this forum as well. I truly consider it a defining moment to be able to call myself an author. To be honest, I'm still getting accustomed to it, and at times I don't even really refer to myself as an author, but I consider it a great privilege to be able to have gotten to this point. It's something that I've dreamed of for many, many years, and I really believe that every single person, if they were to put their mind to it, can actually become an author, because we all have a story. And my story in particular is filled with people who have invested in me and people who have supported me. And so I refer to people who have invested in me as investors. And I think, of course, of my parents. I think of teachers. I think of mentors. I think of Sunday school teachers and the entire community where I grew up in Nevis, so many people who invested in my life. And so I have many investors, and I have as well the privilege to have many supporters. And I'm so grateful to have my supporter extraordinaire here tonight, my wife, of almost 25 years, coming up later this year. And I thank God for her and my parents, my family, my children, and my church family, so many people who continue to support me. You would understand as I present this book, Too Blessed to Make a Mess, as to why it is named as such. But before I get into the heart of my presentation here tonight, I'd like you to take a look at a brief 1 minute plus book trailer that really gives you a very quick overview of my book, and then I'll come back and share in a little more detail.
What holds the most value on earth? Jewelry, property, cars? No. It's your life. You didn't create it. You cannot buy it. You didn't earn it. Yet, you have it. But how should we protect and preserve our life? We must do so with good decisions. Decisions bombard us every day. Some are simple, but some are downright complex. The wrong decision, made out of ignorance, can be catastrophic and even deadly. Too Blessed to Make a Mess gives you a proven mindset that will ensure that you make great decisions and live a life without regrets. This book is down to earth, thought-provoking, and inspirational. Its content is loaded with passion, purpose, perspective, principle, and practicality. Don't dare live in uncertainty and fear about your future. There is an exciting path to your destiny awaiting you. You are too blessed to make a mess.
I'd like to begin by sharing a story. The story is told of a homeless man who was having a really rough time. He was out on the street, and he came across an individual who saw his plight, and this generous individual decided to make an investment into this homeless man. And he said to this homeless man, you know what, I see your situation, and I want to be of assistance to you. And so he committed to this man that I'm going to give you $100 every month. Doesn't seem like much, but it's the best that I could do, and I'm going to commit to that. And this generous man decided to do this. He kept his word. And so this homeless man knew that he could rely on this $100. He was consistent with it, week after week, month after month. After a period of time, the donor, he got married. And as those of you who are married recognize, when you get married, you have additional expenses due to having now a wife. And so he recognized that he's going to need some additional resources to help take care of his responsibility. And so he went back to the homeless man who was still homeless, and he said to him, I promised you that I would give you $100 every month. But you understand, I've gotten married and I have a wife. And so I'm going to have to cut this $100 in half, and I'm going to have to make it $50 a month. The homeless man was a little disappointed, but he didn't say much. And so this commitment continued at $50 a month. This continued on for some time, and then eventually, as might happen, children came along. And so the donor was forced to go back to this homeless man, and he said to him, "Sir, I'm sorry to report to you that my commitment of $50 now has to be cut in half, and now it's going to be $25 per month." The homeless man looked at him, and at this point he was a little perturbed and a little upset that what had started out at $100 had now gotten to $25. And in his frustration, he retorted to the donor, he said, "Sir, it looked to me as if you're feeding your family off of my money." And there's a moral to this story, that there are times when we miss certain virtues in life because we get accustomed to certain things. I would submit to you that in this story, this homeless man, he missed a virtue of awareness. He was unaware that this man's sacrifice was coming from a heart of generosity. He didn't have to do it, but this man decided to do so. And so the recipient, he was missing awareness. He was also missing what I would say was appreciation. He was taking something that was regular and he was taking it for granted. And this lack of awareness, this lack of appreciation led to a lack of accountability. You see, he never thought or considered what he should do to make this donor feel like this investment that was being made in his life was actually worth it. And you see, when we miss important virtues in our lives, it often has some unfortunate consequences. This homeless man, as I indicated, he became stagnant. He wasn't going anywhere. There was a lack of progress in his life. This stagnation led as well to demotivation. You know, at times when you're not making progress, you can begin to lose confidence and you can begin to lose drive because you recognize that you're not moving forward. And sadly, as I've alluded to in this homeless man's life, he got to a place of entitlement, which is a lack of understanding. You see, he felt that he was as if he was owed something, when he was really receiving something that he should have been appreciative for. On the other hand, I want to submit to all of us here tonight that when we are keenly aware of the value of something, when we recognize that what we have, that we have been given, we tend to appreciate it better. And how many of you know that every single one of us here tonight, by virtue of being human beings, we have been entrusted with some things. By virtue of us having life, we've been entrusted with time. Time is a gift. We've been entrusted with treasure. We've been entrusted with talent. And when we recognize that we have received some things that are very valuable, it lays the foundation for us to have something special produced in our lives. I want to share with you a very brief personal story. Years ago, before I left Nevis for college, I had a mindset that drove me towards success because of an incredible sacrificial and selfless act that I detail in my book in the early part of the book. And this act facilitated and allowed me the opportunity to get to college and to further my education. If this selfless and sacrificial act didn't happen, sadly, I would not have been able to go. And when I left Nevis, I remember leaving. This was in the days when there would be an airline. There was Nevis Express flying between Nevis and St. Kitts, 5-minute flight. And I remember leaving Nevis, flying on that plane, getting to St. Kitts, and then going to Puerto Rico, and then eventually getting to New York. And all throughout my journey on my way to New York, I had this compulsion in my heart and in my mind that I must make this investment that was placed in me worth it. I felt that there was no way that I could come back to Nevis and this investment in my life be in vain. And so I say that because I firmly believe with all my heart that there's a very real and tangible application of that personal experience that can apply to every one of our lives in this journey here on planet Earth. You see, the reason why I believe it's so applicable is because there is nothing that you and I have that we didn't receive. We were born with, as I mentioned, time, talent, and treasure. And when we recognize the value of what we have, that what we have we've been given by God Himself, I believe with all conviction that it will produce in our lives some amazing results. You say, well, what can that produce? I believe that it produces, first of all, prolonged awareness that somebody else has blessed me with what I have. I believe that it also produces a proper appreciation. Appreciation. How many of you know that we live in an entitled world where so many people feel like what I have, it was owed to me? I don't know, how many of you here have children? Do you realize that children seem to just have it easier than any other generation, but yet it's so easy to be so easy to be dissatisfied with what we have, right? And I believe that when we truly are aware of the value of what we have, we tend to appreciate it so much more. And prolonged appreciation leads to what I call personal accountability, that I owe what I have to somebody else so that I have to make it count. And this really is the thrust of my book, that awareness, accountability, and appreciation will lead to a powerful attitude that I can't afford to mess up, because too much has been invested in me. I believe that this attitude guides our decision-making in this journey of life. I believe that it makes this journey fulfilling. I believe that it causes us to have an appropriate level of dependence on God Himself, who has given us what we have. And I believe that it would propel us to fulfilling our purpose here on earth with passion. This book that I believe that I've been inspired to write is down to earth. It's relatable. It's transparent. I would submit that it's not a biography, but it incorporates life experiences that I've of course had here on Nevis, here on St. Kitts, living in the U.S. for almost 20 years. And I firmly believe that the reader of this book, and it's my hope, would be able to make applications to the personal experiences that I have, because the truth is no two journeys are alike. But I believe that the applications can be made. As was mentioned in my bio, I grew up in a pastor's home. I think I've had a wealth of different experiences growing up in a pastor's home, being a primary school teacher, both and secondary school teacher. I've taught at college level as well. I was a software engineer for a major company there in the US, and an adjunct professor. But through all of that, through a compulsion that I've been blessed with so much. God placed a burden on my heart to come back to my homeland, and I'm so glad that my family came back with me as well to be involved in the lives of other people. Why? Because I feel so passionately that I am too blessed to just keep what I have to myself, and I'm too blessed to make a mess, because there is a thrust of accountability that I have to the one who has blessed me with so much. And I believe that every single one of us has been blessed with a lot, oftentimes that we sadly take for granted. And so I am hoping that especially every parent here, that this book, of course, a book has a niche and has a particular audience. And I believe that for young people, especially between the ages of 18 and 30, there's so many critical decisions made in that period of life. I mean, how do you know who to marry? How do you know what career field God would have you? How do you know how to rebound from difficult and traumatic experiences, where to go to school? I mean, these are decisions that you don't want to make it going eeny, meeny, miny, mo. You want to have guidance and direction to be able to fulfill the purpose that God has for you so that you can accomplish your destiny. I'm a big believer in destiny, and I'm a big believer that there is a purpose for every single life. But in order to get there, one has to follow a particular path, like a GPS, to lead you to that place of destiny. What about if we feel like you're not good enough? What about matters of comparison? Oftentimes we have feelings and emotions, and sometimes we think that we're the only one who feels like this. But then when we recognize and explore, we realize we have so many things in common. And I trust that this book will be able to help. I believe that it's somewhat of a manual on life, and I believe that it would bode well in making decisions that can help us to fulfill our destiny. This book, I believe, will propel individuals not only to cope with life, but to triumphantly overcome the challenges of life. It's available on Amazon, it's available on Barnes & Noble, and all the major book outlets out there. And also, I have it with me, and I can be reached 660-9786. But I'm so very grateful for the privilege to be here tonight. And I say again, congratulations to all of the authors. Congratulations to all of you, and happy World Book and Copyright Day. I certainly appreciate your time. And again, it's truly a privilege to be here this evening. And may God bless you.
Thank you very much, Pastor Maynard. I think the title of your book can be a daily mantra that a lot of us can benefit from. Too blessed to make a mess. Thank you. I would now invite Mrs. Sonita Daniel, who is going to preside over the launch of digital exhibition of books by local authors. After that, we will have a question and answer segment, and then the presentation to authors, and then we'll wrap it up.
of you ever thought of a world without books? Well, tonight I would like to express heartfelt gratitude to the CFPC Library team, especially Cassandra Nisbet, Venicia Wyatt, and Jose Descent, and our supportive team at Indiana University at Bloomingdale, headed by Willa Liebert Tavernier, one of our famous firsts at the CFPC for being its first state scholar, and also to Isabel Byron, who has helped with editing, and the authors themselves, who have provided information and photographs to enable the realization of the digitization of our exhibit, our physical exhibit, which is usually mounted in celebration of independence each year. There are over 40 authors and about 87 books which have been published over the past 40 years of independence. So today, on World Book and Copyright Day, we celebrate the power of writing. We celebrate publishing. We celebrate our authors. Today, we wish to express our heartfelt gratitude. It therefore gives me pleasure today to launch this digital exhibition in honor of our local writers. The information provided, you can see the metadata that's provided in the exhibit. We have the description about the exhibit itself, which is in commemoration of the 40th anniversary of independence. We have a biography of each author and also a description of the book published by the author, or books, because some persons have published more than one book. So, for instance, if you can click on authors, we are experiencing a little challenge with the technology this evening. So I would have preferred to be able to manipulate it from here myself. And so we have, then you click on the book. So under each author, we have the photograph, and we also have a short biography. All of the authors on the panel this evening is included in the exhibit. And those in the audience, there are Tatum, Mr. Hamilton, you are in the exhibit also. We have, can you click on book collection? Damien, if you click on the book collection, so you would see a photo of the book. That's Pink is for Boys, published by Willa. Dancing in Bondage by Jacinth Henry Martin. The book on bullying by our Dean of Teacher Education. You got page down. It's a work in progress, because I'm sure there are other books published which we may not be aware of, but we will release the link. You can continue to page down. Damien? That's on Social Security by Mr. Hamilton. Down. Mr. Manners' book, Beyond the Bush, Places of Memory, ABC book, Attempting to Confess, novel by Lachlan Tatum, What Start by the Morning, all of the book, the book by Miss Coffey, did you see it? It's right there. Mr. Inanga's book. Let's see Pastor Maynard's book. They are all in there. Too blessed to make a mess. So we are happy that we're able to promote our authors and writers, and we want to wish you great success as you continue to write. We will share the link. There's an attendees list, and so your email, and we'll be able to share the link with you. And we'll continue to work on it. And if there are authors who may not sit here, we are not aware of, persons might be in the diaspora, we'd like to. And we want to encourage those of you having witnessed this evening, this event, may you be inspired to write as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Daniel. We'll now have a question and answer segment where, of course, you can ask questions of the authors who have presented here. So if you have any question, you can just stand and ask your question to the author. No questions?
Okay, so you just give me.
Good evening, Brenda Caesar. Mr. Inanga, the lady would like to know. We read in between the lines, the book. We understand. So she just like to know, what age group are you trying to direct your book to? The age group.
That's a question. Thank you very much for that question. That is a question I get asked very often. And I could tell you my daughter can read this book and get a wonderful laugh about it, and adults can read. She's 8, right? And adults can read this book and get a different laugh from it. So under no circumstance will any child understand what those undertones are, and under no circumstance will us adults get offended by that. It's, at the end of the day, it's biology and imagination, right? And there are lessons in the book, right? In fact, there's a part in the book where they were told specifically, avoid the blue room. And it says, don't enter this blue room. And these friends decided to go into this blue room, and definitely there was this orb of terror that unleashed fury on them and hit them and all that kind of stuff, and they learned their lesson. There was a particular character who was actually very cocky, very arrogant, and he died because of his arrogance, right? He wasn't listening. He felt he was better than everybody else. There was a character who was a lot more amicable and just looking out for everybody else. So you can identify with each character, and at the end of the book, there are lessons also. So each of those friends who died, except for the main character, are looking down and basically giving their own stories about, you know, what they've seen and whatnot. So it can be for everybody, and I was very, very careful in that regard. Now, I do have to go and do some reading on what happens from a genetic standpoint and DNA and all that stuff to make sure that chapter 2 is going to be in line with that in the same way, so that it can be for everybody to read.
Thank you very much. Good evening to everyone. I thoroughly enjoyed the session this evening, and I want to commend Mrs. Daniel very, very, very highly for what she's doing. I think she's doing a tremendous job. I think had it not been for Ms. Daniel and her innovation, her innovative spirit, a lot of us would not know that we have good writers here in St. Kitts Nevis. So I want to thank you very much. My concern tonight is that publishing has changed a lot. There was a time when you could just send a book to Amazon and you get it done. These days, if you don't know the technology and so on, you could become very frustrated. So I am almost 100 years old, and I don't think I can get into the technical. I just spoke to Mr. Nangadir, and he whispered something about this particular matter. But I'm wondering whether some type of system cannot be put in place. Could somebody start a business where I can just bring my book to you? It's not like years ago when you could go to McPenny's and tell them, do this for me, and they will stick the pages together, or however they do it, and you get a book. It's totally different now. So I'm hoping in the long run, I don't know whether anybody knows of, you know, the type of kind of effort, kind of things that you need to do to get something like that available to writers like me who have books I'm writing right now. But it's the technical aspects of getting your book published that I'm worried about. I don't know whether anybody can provide me with any such comfort that we, people like me, may need. Thank you.
Yeah, I truly concur with the concern that was expressed. Initially, when I started writing, I thought that the writing would be the hard part, because it really was, it took me a long time to actually start. My wife would attest that she heard about this book in my head for years. And it was only until, coincidentally, during COVID, I got COVID probably January of 2021, I think. And due to my quarantine and isolation, my writing actually got a jumpstart. And I started writing like 1,000 words a day, and was able to finish my manuscript in about 4 or 5 months. And when I got to that stage, I was like, wow, I mean, I'm good. Thinking that shortly thereafter, I would have my book, in hand. But through a series of events and even counsel, I was led to not only self-publish, but independently publish. Now, the reason why I'm giving you all that background is because the writing took me, let's say, about 6 months. Of course, there was editing. But because I embarked on independently publishing, which meant starting my own label, Strive for the Prize, it took me another probably year learning all the ropes and understanding what was needed to get that done. And so I say that to say that I've really started my own publishing company, label, Strive for the Prize, and I'm actually putting a caveat, of course, through limited experience, was able to publish my first book, but I'm more than willing to give guidance and counsel. I would also say that my publishing, I guess call it company now, I actually have a particular genre that I would lean towards. So, but I'm able to, willing to share my experience in terms of what I've learned to help, because it is more daunting than it at times seems and can be very intimidating. But I just wanted to mention that, but the concern is well expressed.
My experience might help someone, and it's in response to Mr. Tatum's question. Because I'll just tell you what my experience was. My first book, I typed my own stuff, and I sent it to Trinidad. I got it published. That's 20 years ago. This one, I did the same, and I sent it to Barbados. And I got it, and I sold some. And then I tried to get it on Amazon, and that is where the story starts. Because I tried to do it myself. I had worked with a local secretary, and then I tried to do the Amazon part by myself. And I started with the cover, and I had problem with the cover, because anybody who has dealt with Amazon, they have a template for the covers, and my cover that was done locally didn't fit their template, and they kept rejecting it, and so on. And it went on for months until I got, not fed up, but what's the word? I lost confidence in the prospect, and I put my book aside, having sold it locally for months. And then the thought came to me, why not call a friend of mine and say, because I contact Jehan Williams, because I'd spoken to her before. And after I said, can you help here? I'm not getting anywhere with Amazon. And she gave me the name of an outfit. It's called Fiverr, Fiverr. And she said, just check that. And I went on Fiverr the same day, and immediately I got in contact with a young lady. And she promised to do it for me. The story is within a couple of days, she had it on Amazon. So all the things I had been struggling with about how to fit this and how to get, she did it within days. And the shocking thing to me, when I asked her bill, she said $64. And I was shocked. I paid her $100, which was still cheap, because I would think it would cost me hundreds and hundreds of dollars. I paid her, and then I asked her age, and she said she was 21. And that shocked me even more. So, within a week, after struggling for months to get it on Amazon, within a week, I got it done for $100. So that might help somebody.
My experience was, I did some online searches to find publishers, and I was having a bit of difficulty. I started checking specifically Caribbean or regional publishers. I saw quite a bit, but none of them really resonated with me. And then interestingly, I came across this one, Inside and Insight. The publisher is Antiguan by birth, but she's actually established here in St. Kitts. And I was able to make contact with her, and working with her was really a pleasing experience. She was able to get it on the Amazon platform. All of those things we talk about that would normally be very frustrating and difficult if you're not very tech savvy and if you're not very patient. She was able to walk me through that whole process and everything. So that worked out for me in that respect.
Can you repeat the name of the publisher?
Inside and Insight Publishing. Her name is Esther Thomas.
Yeah, one of the things I would mention, which goes along with what Mr. Manners was saying, is that oftentimes the truth of the matter is a lot of this process, you really, if you were to put your mind to it, you can actually do it on your own. The frustrating thing at times is just not knowing the right people. What has been of great help to me is, even as was mentioned with Fiverr, is that this is a resource of freelancers in so many different areas, is that when you find somebody who is a good resource, then you hold on to that, right? Fiverr, it could be good and Fiverr could be bad, right? It's all about whether, it's almost like, shooting at the wind sometimes, but you get somebody good, then that's your contact. So for example, even with my book, there are resources that I've utilized in different parts of the world, right? Because, okay, that's my editor there. They could be anywhere on planet Earth, right? That's my editor. That's my designer there. And once you find that resource, it's a matter of just knowing the steps. And once you develop a relationship, then that person becomes your go-to. And so oftentimes it's just a matter of knowing the steps and knowing who to call, and because those are experts in that particular area. Even as he mentioned about the design of a cover. It might look simple, but they are so stringent in terms of the requirements. You have to have somebody who knows exactly every aspect so that that design can be accepted by the printers and the Amazons and the different booksellers that are out there. So I say all of that to say it's a matter of knowing the process and having experts in that particular area where that's what they do. And once that has been established and you have those relationships with different people, then it makes the process a whole lot easier. I would submit that probably the second time around would be vastly easier and less strenuous because you have different go-to people who you can rely on.
Just quickly talk about my experience. Similar to what they've spoken about, it was daunting, to be very honest, because I did not know what to do afterwards. I thought I could just upload a text to Amazon until I realized that, I have illustrations. Okay? I want it to look a particular way. So that meant that my book on Amazon may not be able to be searched with text. And that changes everything. So if you have illustrations, it may change the way you want it to look. It may change your whole entire strategy. What I'm trying to make is, I did it myself, and I'm probably not making any money because I did it myself. Let me say that again. I'm probably not making any money because I did it myself. If you go with an actual publisher, a lot of them, their job is to help you sell and get distribution in areas that you didn't even think were possible, right? And so you have to know what your goal is. I didn't write this book to make a lot of money. I wrote this book to say that I am an author, but I have a bigger goal, as I've already said, to create an animation from this, right? So when that opportunity comes, I'm already prepared. I have the content, I have something that's out there that people can actually see because I have a bigger goal. So you have to know what you want and what you're willing to spend your money on. So I invested heavily in illustration because it had to sell. We buy with our eyes. If the book cover is just white with words on it, you're not going to buy it, right? The cover has to sell. So I put more money into that than into distribution. At some point when I'm mentally able to lock in onto the next phase, then I will go through that iteration onto where this is supposed to end up. So you have to know what you want and why you're writing. And if it is that you want penetration in several different facets, then you talk about the audiobooks also. Yeah, that's a thing. You know, a lot of people don't read, they listen, right? Then you have to talk about whether you want to narrate yourself or you want to actually pay somebody to narrate your book. So there's a whole bunch of different things you have to factor, but you have to know what you want at first. That's the first hurdle to get over. All right?
Are there any more questions? See, people have started to yawn. So we will get on with it. And I will invite back to the podium Mrs. Sonita Daniel, who is going to do some presentations to the authors. Mrs. Daniel.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to say that this evening was a very enlightening evening, and we learned a lot from the authors. So I would like to congratulate the authors, and I am hoping that the next Authors Forum that we will see many more new authors for new books. This evening, we are pleased that you have graced us with your presence, and we have a little token for each of the authors who came this evening. I was told by one of the authors that I should bring the tokens to them, so I will do that. Your wish is your command. Your wish is my command. Thank you. So I'll begin with the gentleman in the middle. Mr. Manners. Thanks, everyone, and have a good evening.
Thank you very much, Ms. Laverne Brooks. Ms. Brooks is the Dean of the Division of Art Science and General Studies, ASGS, filling in there for making presentation to the authors. I would like to thank everyone for coming out this evening to the CFBC's 4th Authors Forum in celebration of books. Once ago, when we hear about books, we only thought of books that were imported from Europe, North America, and other places. But we have the talent here in the Caribbean, here in St. Kitts and Nevis, to produce our own books. And when we produce our own books, we can tell the stories through our own experiences, through our own eyes, through our own history, and not simply allow someone from outside to tell our story. It's not that books from outside are not important. I'm not saying that. But when we write and when we tell our story, people can say, this is an author who was born and bred among us, and so therefore we can appreciate what they have written. And so we appreciate all of the authors, local authors, those of course who are here and those who presented virtually. Mrs. Kerisa Kelly, let's put it up for her. Mr. Stapleton, Leonard Stapleton, is another local author. History, he's a historian, but he did not make it to today's program. But we want to big up Mr. Hansel Manners. Mrs. Carol Mitchell, who presented virtually. Mrs. Willa Liebert Tavernier. Miss Shahada Jack, and I must say I was really captivated by her poetry. And there again, you know, highlighting our black ancestry, that we are all kings and queens and Nubian kings and queens, and that our royalty must not be underrated. Mrs. Elziva Coffey, my cousin. Mr. Enoite Inanga, and Mr. Wayne Maynard. Thanks to all of you. Of course, we thank Mr. Jonathan Bass, who rendered the national anthem playing the, what you call that, the harmonica. We thank Mr. Andrew Abraham, the president of the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College, for his opening remarks. We thank Mrs. Sonita Daniel, who organized all of this. She's the director of library services here at CFBC, doing an awesome job. And Miss Dorothy Warner, who presented the official message from the Director General of UNESCO and her own message as Secretary General of the St. Kitts and Nevis National Commission for UNESCO. We thank, of course, the media for coming. I see there was a photographer from SKNIS, and also the Education Media Unit. We thank them as well. And the Clarence Fitzroy Bryant College, Mr. Damian Hobson there, who streamed this forum live. We say thanks to you. And thanks to all of you for coming. All of you. Mrs. Rogers, Mrs. Cable. Of course, the educators and their presence here, and Mr. Tatum as well. They're all educators, and they take a keen interest, especially in the literary arts. So thank you to all of you. Thank you to Miss Brenda Caesar as well, the executive officer in the President's office. And we wish to see you next year for the 5th CFBC Authors Forum, where there will be more authors then. Thank you very much, and get home safely. And there is some snacks that you can partake in on the outside. Thank you.